Hi, I'm Heather Strotter, host of A Place of Yes. This episode was a long time in the making. Jake's Help from Heaven as a board has evolved a lot. And as it evolves, it's become very clear how much we love what we do and how personal it is. All of our board members have experienced grief in one way or another. In addition to Brian and I, we have Angelo, who also experienced the loss of his son. We have Mike, who experienced the loss of his wife and the mother to his 3 children. And there's Colleen, who's an OG board member, but she shares her feelings of grief in relationship to her mom and her family. And then there's Jamie, a pediatrician, Jake's pediatrician, and she shares what it's like to offer care for those that are out of the norm. We are all bonded by the purpose of helping those like Jake, but we come at it from our own personal stories. These stories are important not only to the work of Jake's Help from Heaven, but to all those who are on this journey. We are so much more than a board. We are a family working together to make a difference. Welcome to A Place of Yes, a podcast about how I moved through my darkest hour. And for me, that was in channeling my grief into good. Welcome to the show. So I am sitting here with Angelo Calvoni, former Saratoga Hospital president and current Jake's Help from Heaven board member. Well, first of all, I want to say that when Brian and I asked you to join the board, I was really nervous. And people had been saying to us, our mutual friend Colleen, who's also on the board, she's like, we've got to get Angelo. When Angelo retires, we've got to get it. And then we were actually, I think you know the story, we were at your retirement event.
Right.
And Todd Shimkus was standing next to me. Or actually, I think it was between Brian and I. And as you were speaking, and you were just such a great speaker, and we were all just really locked in, Todd starts whispering, he's like, Jake's, got to get him for Jake's. And it was just funny because a handful of people had sort of said that. And then Brian and I were like, there's got to be something to it because a lot of people have said it. So then I think I had said to Colleen, let's do this, see if he's interested. Or we kind of did this kind of like it was high school. Ask him if he likes us. I remember we ended up meeting for a drink with you and Kate at the club, and you said yes. We were so thrilled. One of the things when we started the board is early on, our advice was you can't just have your friends and family. You've got to be thoughtful about who's there. A lot of the original members, Colleen and Julie, they're certainly our friends and almost like family because the board becomes kind of like a family. But when we started, we just knew them kind of peripherally. But what made you say yes? As you know, well, we were bullyish. Some people say that people can't say no to me because I'm a bully.
Well, first off, I'm amazed you were nervous to ask me. I'm glad you did. Why did I say yes? I was retiring. I had some time. I was beginning to miss doing important things. Yeah. I always knew basically what you did, but as I became more familiar, I just liked what you did. It felt important to me. So this is satisfying to still be doing important work.
I love that you said that too, though, because I remember people were saying to us, he's going to say in the beginning that he's retired and doesn't want to do anything, but there's going to be a window when he's ready to do something. So it's kind of funny that you said that too, because that was a little bit
Yeah, that happened pretty fast for me, actually.
I always kind of think, people are like, you've got the former president of Saratoga Hospital. That was a big job, important job, dealing with sick people. And what we do at Jake's is figure out kind of the other end of that, right? We try to figure out how to bring comfort and get families what they need. And it's, if the world was perfect, all of healthcare would work together better, but it doesn't quite. Is there anything that you have learned from the work at Jake's that you kind of wish you knew when you were president?
I think I always kind of had a sense of it and appreciated it. Life is so hard on people. Okay. And for people who have not experienced hardship and grief, it can kind of tend to look easy. Yeah. The appreciation anyone in healthcare has to have and has to keep is that the people you're trying to take care of and assist have had hardships and tragedy in their life. And appreciating that and staying close to it, I think made us better leaders.
Yep.
That kind of bled over into the Jake's
coming onto the board and
onto the board. Because if you forget why you're there and the work that's really being done by the people that work for you, I never took care of a patient. The best I could do was facilitate and make things easier for the people that actually did that work. So seeing these situations up close, I think makes us better people.
It's one of the key reasons I think why so many people felt you would be a good fit for Jake's and why we did too. We have loved having you on the board, and I've told this story to several people. Most recently, I loved having you as we have as a board kind of, are making some transitions and people have heard me talk about sustainability and how can we keep Jake sustainable. I love you came to that meeting with like notes, with a list. Like you came prepared. And Brian and I were so touched and like honored that you did, because, you know, I'm always sending out things, and I love that you like read it and came. But you were key in us. Like for the first time after that meeting, for the first time in a while, I'm excited about our work again. Like I think we have made Jake something that maybe we're not going to be giving away quite as much as we've had in the past, but we have really narrowed in who needs our help in our mind kind of the most. Where are those voids and what can we do to help them?
It didn't feel like that big of a deal, but thank you. You talk about kind of changing the focus and limiting, but at the end of the day, every cent that's raised goes to a recipient that needs
100%.
Needs resources. So if it's a little bit of a different focus, it still goes.
It goes to who needs it.
It still goes to who needs it. It's not like money's being held back.
I love, it's delivery season, as I call it. You know, things are starting to show up at my house, and it's time to start going on, like bringing things. And it's just the best part, right? And I need to bring you on a delivery, because it's one thing to be going through it and have the conversations with people. It's another thing to actually see
it and feel it.
See it and feel it. And sometimes it's feel it, just because there's not always words for it. There's not always that, but you just know that you are making a difference. Mm-hmm. So the other piece that I think is special about our board is that everybody on the board, one way or another, is somehow connected to our story. And when I say our story, I mean sort of Brian and I. And certainly you are as well. So I don't want to go anywhere that you are uncomfortable, but you lost Sam. Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about that? And if being on Jake's board offers you any comfort or compassion or any feeling not alone kind of thing?
The answer to that's yes to kind of everything you just said. I wasn't able to save my son. So I have dreams about saving other children, being there in a moment where a child or a young person needs something that makes a difference, and I can be a part of that. It's a fantasy I experience all the time.
Often?
Yes. So being a part of Jake's has a satisfaction, feeling like it's very real. Yeah, our son Sam didn't have a physical disability in the way that Jake did, and many of the children we take care of. But it was a disability nonetheless. He had underlying mental health issues, not debilitating. If you spent time with him, he's just absolutely wonderful. The brightest, funniest little guy.
He was your youngest?
Middle. And always experienced anxiety and frankly, some conditions we probably never really were able to put our thumb on. We looked past some of them when we shouldn't have. He eventually became reliant upon drugs. He would tell us that he was trying to fix himself. Went to Peru and lived in the mountains for a while, came back, stopped taking drugs, and was fearful that he would go back. And he did, and we lost him. So as I look out across, the kids we help and talk to other families, no one has escaped, very few have escaped a challenge somewhere. Life's so hard on people. It's easy to look past that and think everything's fine, and it's generally not. So yeah, being a part of this is satisfying. Generally speaking, the children that we help are in a different type of category. But as I try to put myself in the place of some of those families that love their children more than they love their own lives.
Absolutely.
As I love Sam more than I loved my own life, there is satisfaction in being able to do something tangible. So much of what we do and talk about is so distant and removed from the real action.
Yeah.
At Jake's, it's not.
No. It's very it's concrete. Yeah.
It's need, it's request, it's decision, and then something's in the car being delivered. Yeah. That's really unusual. There aren't many organizations that you can participate in that has that. Long rambling answer, but
no.
It does connect for me.
All parents who've had this loss and all parents who have a kid with any kind of challenges, whether it's mental health or physical or a combination, you said it, like there's things that maybe we should have not let go or, all families in this situation have that.
Kate and I, thank God, have moved through and haven't got stuck in the it was our fault, blame ourselves trap. We wish we could have done more.
Yeah.
I would have done anything. We gave him a safe place, a home during his recovery, supported him in any way that was meaningful. We found his writings. He liked to write. He knew he was loved, and it was one of the more important things in his life.
It's incredible. I mean, it doesn't make any of the horribleness of it go away, but it's got to give you some comfort, relief, like something.
It does. I have this fear that I'm going to go through a day and not think of him. And it's this desperate, dark
Awful.
fear.
Like could almost make you throw up.
If you were to look through my house and drawers, anything that meant anything to Sam, I can't get rid of. He and I both play guitar. I still have his guitar picks laying out.
Oh.
And the list is endless, but it provides some sense of comfort. And I could go on and on about the physical things, and people would look at them, they're just things. They're not just things to me.
I have 2 shirts in my closet, and this is kind of weird because it's been 13 years, but I have 2 shirts in my closet that I've never washed. It's terrible because it's a shirt he was wearing when the ambulance and EMTs and all came into the house, and they ripped it when they were trying to do, compressions and whatnot. But I have that, and then I have the one that he was wearing like I think the night before or something. And I just have them in my closet. Like they've never been washed. They've got like stain on it. They're kind of gross by now. It's like 13 years, but those are, that's it.
Anyone that understands, we have a whole closet full of his clothes, and I'm keeping them because I want to see them on my grandsons.
I love that.
So it's all completely normal.
They're all different coping mechanisms, and I think sometimes people ask the big questions like, well, how do you cope? And they want different answers, but this is how we cope, right? Like this is how you cope. You keep the shirt in your closet.
People ask you how you get through it. People who haven't experienced it, there's not an answer that can make sense to anyone. People say, well, you'll get over it. They're in a better place. I can't hear those kinds of things. I tell people, you can get through it, but you'll never get over it. I really didn't think I would get through it. I thought it would be the end of us. It wasn't the end of us. If I hadn't had other children, could have been.
It's interesting that you say that because I've said that a lot about Ethan. I think because you had adult children, but it's still the same. So I think I love that actually. It holds true whether your kids are 5 or whether they're young adults. You know what I mean? Like that's what being a parent is. I want to go back to what you said about the dreams. Mm-hmm. So when you have those dreams of like saving other children, do you wake up feeling good or sad?
Good. I don't have great words for the feeling.
Well, that's hard.
But I feel good. It feels like something good happened.
Do you, and this, I was not planning on asking this, but the dream thing. So I have had, and I can count on one hand, so it's been 13 years and it's not a lot of times, but I have had like some nights where Jake is there and it's Jake. It's like the Jake that I remember and know. And I wake up from like, and I wake up almost like gasping, right? Like because I just don't want it to end. Like I don't know what I think. Like, is he really coming in my dreams? Like, I don't know what that is. I don't have any words for it at all.
I wish I dreamt about him. I rarely experience him in a dream. And I think it's the self-protection mode.
Yeah.
Only a few times have I experienced him in dreams. It's been hard. It's been very
hard. Okay.
Very hard. Yeah. I talked to other people that knew him. I like being around people that knew him. When there aren't people that remembering him anymore, he will truly be gone. Yeah. Other people talk about dreaming about him. I wish I could go to sleep every night
and see him. Right. Yeah.
I don't know if I would do well with it. So I probably have, in 8 years, only had 3 dreams. All of us, all the families you deal with are searching for something that gives them peace and comfort. Being around other people who have experienced similar things gives me comfort. As I said earlier, I've been with others who have lost children and had meaningful conversations, and I don't know if we said more than 5 or 10 words. There's things I can't explain to other people, and so being with people that have had similar experiences has been helpful. I've tried to be helpful to others in situations. I'm not sure how helpful I've been, but I feel like I want to try when I can.
No, I think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to touch on one more thing because I think this is huge, and I think that a lot of people who listen to the show feel this one way or the other. So you had said, you're scared of like the day when you won't think about Sam, or like what if you skip a day of that? And that's been something for me that has been difficult because not that a day goes by that I don't think about Jake, but that I have had to be more deliberate about it. Yes, there's pictures everywhere and there's everything, but I can see that day could happen. It makes me feel like I could throw up because it feels like if I'm his mom and I can't, if I go a day without him, then other people aren't even thinking about him at all, right? And it's like you said, like when the people who knew Sam are no longer, like it becomes kind of, I don't want to say an obsession, but it's just this really sad feeling. It's like this.
I know we're saying exactly the same thing. It's an affirming my love for him.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing that I've never talked about this with anyone. One of these days I might wake up and realize he didn't cross my mind, and I'll feel bad about it.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Getting through it is the only thing we can do. and hopefully help someone else along the way. If I could do one thing that helps someone else deal with what we dealt with better, I'll die happy.
No, I agree. Thank you, Angelo, for sharing not only the real work behind Jake's Help from Heaven, but your why and how it helps you commit to the work we do. I think each perspective helps us to get to the heart of the work we do, which is the individuals we help. We're going to hear next from Mike, who shares his experiences with Jake's Help from Heaven, both before being a board member and as a board member. He talks openly about one of his unique perspectives as he candidly shares the journey to a diagnosis of his late wife, Kim. He talks of his role as a caregiver and then how he grappled with the loss.
I remember the first involvement with Jake's was going to a family fun day, and that was like 2013. We were amazed by the atmosphere. We loved that there was Jake's families there. At that one, you had some of the adaptive equipment that was there, and it kind of showed, okay, a regular bike you can buy $50. This is a $500.
We had the little price tags on them.
Exactly. So our niece Marin has Down syndrome, and they were kind of looking at adaptive bikes and things like that, and really struck close to home. When you called and asked, I love what Jake's does, and so it was an easy yes.
As we have progressed as a board, and I always try to explain this to people, and I don't know that they always believe me, but I always talk about it's like the greater good around that table. What I love about it is every quarter when we leave, I know that we have made the best decision, that we have been really good stewards of the money that we have raised, and that we have really done our very best to stay true to our mission in the work.
So when we get the applications, I don't even know how much time could take. Half a day, could take longer to go through, depending on how many applications that we have. I mean, it's always good and always difficult because you see these families and everybody needs help. And it's hard because you want to say yes to everybody, but then there is this, and I'll throw the lawyer terms in there, right? We've got this fiduciary duty to the organization, to Jake's Help from Heaven, of we only have so much money. We have a mission, and we're supposed to adhere to it and adhere to the guidelines that we've set for ourselves.
One of the other things that I really do love about the board, I think we're so fortunate to have the board that we do and the committed members that we have. Everyone does that work. And like you said, it could take a half day, it could take a little more depending on what it is. And as I've been thinking about everyone around that table, I also think that it's obviously a very personal mission for Brian and I. It's personal because we are trying to keep Jake's memory alive. I feel like everyone around that table has something personal that connects them. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what I kind of, in my opinion, perceive as sort of like your connection, right? Kim was diagnosed with mesothelioma. Can you talk a little bit about that journey? At least in my perspective on the outside, it came pretty quick.
It did. It started in the summer of 2014, and it just started with fatigue. Like throughout the course of the summer, she just sort of felt like she couldn't, she was sleeping a decent amount at night, but just was still always tired. And it went to the doctors, I think, for that, and they said, we think you're anemic, and gave her some iron. And then near the end of August, beginning of September, she started throwing up a little bit.
Okay.
And then they thought, iron can be difficult on your stomach, and, we'll give you this for indigestion and et cetera. Okay. And then she kept throwing up, and she was not feeling well kind of by that time, beginning of September. Went to the doctors, and they did a x-ray, and we figured it out. You have pneumonia. So
I was going to say, I thought pneumonia. I remember talking to her outside of Lake Ave, and I was going to say pneumonia. I thought that was one of the...
So they gave her an antibiotic, and, it didn't really help, and she kind of kept throwing up, and they thought, that's also due to antibiotics, et cetera. And kind of went through the month of September going back and forth to the doctors trying to figure out what was going on. It wasn't until the beginning of October, it was very close to the time of her birthday, and had another x-ray, and like, okay, this hasn't cleared up, this pneumonia hasn't cleared up, so we'll send you for a CT. And that's when they said, okay, it's lung cancer. We found a mass in your lung, and we found another mass in your abdomen, so it spread. It progressed so quickly. And during all this time, she was like throwing up and she couldn't really eat or keep anything down. And so we had a week where she went into the hospital kind of doing fluids and sustenance that way. But really from the beginning of October, she couldn't keep anything down. And to make a very long story, well, like I said, it happened quickly, but the mass in her abdomen had grown so large that it basically cut off her intestines. The food couldn't get through.
Oh my God. Okay.
And
Was she in pain?
yes. The pain kind of started around that time. She was when we went to the hospital. In order for her to leave the hospital, like I had to learn how to provide pain medications through a PICC line and things of that nature, and to do the food. Then we got the diagnosis. Initially, it was a different type of cancer, and then we had it sent out to another, the Yale Cancer Center, and they figured out it was mesothelioma, and we started chemo. But mesothelioma generally is a very, I mean, it's always fatal. And we were looking at miracle cases where people had lived 5 years.
But you try to be like optimistic, and
exactly.
you try to find the light.
We're doing the chemo. We will arrest this kind of progression and beat it and try to fight it. The combination of the cancer and the chemo and not being able to eat for several months. I mean, like I said, she had the CT scan. It was the middle of October, and she passed away three months later in January. So it was, it progressed very
fast.
Quickly.
There's so much that does work in our healthcare system, and so much that does work with doctors. And I think at any point in this journey, you sort of have to stay positive. You can't let yourself get too dark. Your case and my case, different stories, but we had the means in which to, and we had a community in which supported us. And sometimes we work with families that just don't have that support or the community or the ability to ask for second opinions, or, you know what I mean, that just don't even know that you can.
Absolutely. We relied on neighbors and friends of ours, one that worked at Yale. We wouldn't have known it was mesothelioma if he hadn't kind of talked us through the process of, here's what you do, and you take the pathology and you want to send it to a major cancer center because they see so many more cases than the local places do. And I mean, who knows that?
Who knows that? And especially when you're in the middle of it, right? Like, it's very easy, like outside, to be like, oh, if this ever happened to me, this is what I would do. When you're reviewing apps, are there any that kind of bring you back to that place? Like, do you think about it, or do you keep it separate?
I generally keep it separate. I would say there's not a lot of overlap. There have been a few recently where it's the family and they can't figure out what's going on. Like, I completely get that because it's frustrating, it's baffling. It's like, what happens. And frankly, just from many of the applications we've done at Jake's, learning about very, very rare diseases. I mean, we've gotten applications and it's there in the documentation of this is, 100 people get this in the United States each year, or even in the world each year. And my kid has this.
Yes.
And it's amazing that the doctors figure that out, because 999 times out of 1,000, that's not what it's going to be.
That's not what
it's going to be.
Be
regular fatigue caused by, something else.
Anything, and
exactly.
Can you talk a little bit about what it was like after Kim passed? Loaded question. Yeah.
Yes.
Just a casual question.
I mean, the first year, it's a blur. I mean, you go through the first few days, and I just found that if I just focused on what I had to do then I could do it. Yeah. If I stopped to think about anything, I was going to stay stopped.
Yeah.
Right. So just focus on what had to be done. And I do remember, you have within the first few days, everybody's there and everybody's in town, and then
there's that quiet.
There's that quiet afterwards. That was very hard. I would say, if not for having to take care of the kids, I probably would not have gotten out of bed most days. Yeah. That was my focus, I think, at least for just to mechanically move and do what I had to do for them. To be there for them, not just take care of them, make sure we're going to school and stuff, but be there for them. After a few months, a friend and classmate of mine from college connected me with another classmate of mine from college who I hadn't really known, and he had lost his wife 2 years earlier.
Oh, okay.
I just remember having the longest phone conversation with him. She had had a brain tumor that they had known about for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And like they always knew at some point something was going to happen. They kind of lived their life with this and lived their life as best they could. Talking with him, and he was 2 years into his journey, and he was doing better. And he talked with me about this isn't something you ever get over, get through. Yeah, I've heard the analogy of how it's waves, and they start out as big waves and they still hit you, and as the years go by, the waves get smaller. The big wave still comes every so often.
Knocks you off your feet.
Moving forward with those that are with you. And it was such a great conversation. I got to the point where I had been, just kind of like I said, more mechanical and trying to be there for the kids. And I was like, I don't want to be just marking time. And I don't want the kids to always be like, oh, it's been, you do the counting. It's been so many months, 6 months. And I want the kids to have...
live again.
To have a childhood, to have good memories. And that really helped. When people say, I'm sorry, they mean it and it's helpful, but it's somebody who says, I know. Right. Yeah. And everybody's, even if they lost somebody's also lost a spouse, or also lost a child, it's not exact, but it's closer.
Just knowing that other people have those experiences. Because I remember early on, and I kind of fought it a little bit because I felt so isolated and so sort of alone. But I remember people would reach out and I'd be like, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do with people reaching out. Do you talk to her?
I do.
Do you talk out loud or in your head?
A mix of both.
What is the one thing you would love to share with people about Kim?
The one thing I would love to share with people about Kim, and the first thing that popped into mind when you asked that question, is that whenever we would go somewhere, if we went to a party, if a fundraiser, just somewhere, and if she noticed that somebody was kind of on the outskirts or by themselves or a little awkward, and it could be one person or it could be a couple, she would just sort of make a beeline for them and just start talking with them.
That's awesome.
Just because she wanted them to be okay.
Feel at home.
Feel comfortable in that home.
Well, and I love that. I mean, that's a kind of a nice full circle with kind of what we do at Jake's, right? We deal with a lot of families that often feel on the outskirts because of their stuff. So to think about someone like Kim who could welcome them in and make them feel like less on the outskirts. Thank you, Mike, for sharing so much of Kim and your own personal grief journey with us. Your openness and willingness to share certainly will resonate with our listeners. Next, Colleen talks about her role as one of the OG board members and why volunteering is important working within the community. For all that know Colleen, she wears her heart on her sleeve, and it was so great to talk about the work we do, the reason we do it, and have her share her why in such a touching way. I'm sitting here with Colleen Carlson, who I feel like I have known Colleen. We've known each other for a very long time.
We sure have.
I always think of you as, well, because you are one of the original board members for Jake's Help from Heaven, when we first asked you to join Jake's Help from Heaven.
Yeah.
I remember Brian and I being pretty nervous about what if they don't say yes? And I
think I said yes in a second.
What made you say yes? I mean, we're so thrilled, obviously, that you did. But
it's such, the whole concept of it was so phenomenal. And I'm very involved in the community, and I love being a part of, organizations. I knew you, I knew Jake, it was just a no-brainer for me. It's still been great. I don't think I'm leaving.
You don't have to.
I know. Yeah. I'd love to be able to help organizations I believe in. And I also love to be with the people that are also involved in it. I've made great friends. I'm sitting here with you. So many amazing friendships have come from volunteering. More people should do it. I mean, it just really enhances your life.
So you had mentioned that you had thought that you got your compassion from your mom. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I have two brothers, and my father died when I was 3. He had a heart attack in the driveway shoveling snow. My brother John was 17 months old, and my mother was 2 months pregnant. Yeah, she was amazing. We all went to college. We all went to Catholic school. My brothers played sports. I did not. We just had a great life, and not easy. We weren't rich. She was involved. We were involved. It's hard to talk about it. She was great. All my friends loved her. But she also was involved with my brother's sports, so I literally would be involved in that, and then I'd help at the concession stand. She instilled me diving in to help out with things. It just became part of our family life.
You know this story. So Jake passed away in December. I went to that Dake Foundation event, that following March. It was the first time Brian and I went out publicly, really, after Jake had passed. We went, and I remember walking in, And I was sort of inundated with people, and I kind of was starting to freak out a little bit. And one of the things that I remember most vividly from that night is your mother. And I hadn't known her before. I hadn't met her. And she came and she was so gracious and so classy.
Yeah.
And just sort of stood with me and shared a little bit about her life with me and just got me out of that chaos and kind of centered me and calmed me. She was amazing.
She was amazing.
She was
really
amazing.
was. I don't know how she did it.
I think it's always important for people to fight to see the good in the world, right?
Yeah.
Because you can be going through something hard. And I think you just got to see the good. And once you start finding the good or seeing the good, you see more of it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's always, what do they say? The first step's the hardest step. But I do think that that is what Jake's provides. You can have something horrible happen to you, but you can persevere and you can still be okay. Thank you, Colleen, for opening up and being so personal and sharing about your mom. Everyone who had the pleasure of getting to know your mom loved her, and it is so clear how important she was to you. Our last section is with Dr. Jamie Hawthorne. Jamie shares some personal anecdotes about being Jake's doctor, especially the day she learned that her previously healthy patient had a seizure and ended up in Boston for 117 days. She shares the emotions that it brought about for everyone in her office, as well as the way everyone had to work together in what would become the new normal for Jake. So I am sitting here with Dr. Hawthorne, and it was funny. It took us forever to start calling her Jamie because like Brian and I would still be like, oh, Dr. Hawthorne. And she would kind of roll her eyes at us and be like, please call me Jamie, like you call every other board member by their name. But to us, she was always Dr. Hawthorne because she was Jake's doctor, and she was also continued to be Ethan's doctor right up until he left for Syracuse. So can you tell me, it's kind of, so you know my perspective on it and why we wanted you to join, but talk to me about when we asked you to join the board and talk to me about, Jake and all of that.
Well, I remember when you guys moved here, but I guess, of course, our biggest, when Jake got sick.
Yes, because he was healthy at first.
He was healthy. He was a healthy infant.
Yeah.
Growing and meeting milestones. And I just remember I wasn't in the office that day, and I came back, and my office was a buzz of the trauma that you guys were going through and living through, and it was heart-wrenching. And you were gone for 6 months. When you came back, we buckled down and got to work. You guys gave Jake everything you could and paid well attention to Ethan, and Ethan thrived, and it's a hard rope to walk. There's a lot, and what I remembered always was your perseverance, and when we would come to a wall, we would meet a wall, and there was a need, and we couldn't find it, and your perseverance, whether it be here and PT and everything at the home and Boston, and just your guys' perseverance was always amazing to me.
I try, not that I don't think about it, but it was such a different life. There's a few things, there was before Jake got sick life, and then there was Jake being sick life, and then there was after Jake. And I almost compartmentalize them a little bit, I think, because to sit in it for too long is just, it's as heart-wrenching today as it was then. It's not any better. There was never a diagnosis. There was never an answer. So, I was about to just say Dr. Hawthorne. But Jamie really, she just helped us manage. She helped us manage, because he would get an ear infection. And if you didn't handle the ear infection, in 2 days, he'd have pneumonia. So sometimes I would just call and be like, something's brewing, so we'd get him on an antibiotic or we'd figure something out. And then she was always in communication with our doctors in Boston. Sometimes we needed a script or we needed blood work or monitor med levels or.
But I was learning too. Because we didn't know.
You didn't, yeah. There was no other kid like Jake. And it is such a great perspective at Jake's Help from Heaven to have yours.
Jake's is uplifting for me. It does give me something to look forward to. And especially our meetings are at the end of one of my work days. And sometimes I'm like, I had a day. But then it's a good meeting. I'm like, I can't think of a better board to be on. Good people, but also it's the place of yes.
Thank you for listening to A Place of Yes. Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend, anybody who might benefit from listening to this. It would make a world of difference if we could just reach more people and share the work that we do and the stories we want to tell. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave us a thumbs up or leave us a comment. We would appreciate all that you can do. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend or two.